Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to RLAfterShock, the longest-running Rocket League weekly podcast for everything that is Rocket League in the European esports scene. I am the Eternal Jay, and joining me, as he always does, is Digital Bacon. My man, it's been a hell of a week so far in the Rocket League scene, so I'll start by asking you, how the hell have you been?
Yeah, been really good. It's been a busy one as well. And then, it does not stop getting busy. We're just about to hit into what I want to call is the climax of Rocket League before summer break, where, we've got DreamHack Dallas coming up. We've got the DreamHack Valencia qualifiers, as well as at the end, the actual Valencia event itself. We've got promotional play-ins. We've got all that good stuff happening. And we've got the RLCS LAN. The end of May, June, and then the start of July is going to be absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, man. I mean, especially when you consider that this is peak esports season in general. I don't know if you've been keeping up with what I've been doing, but fucking Counter-Strike for ESL has just taken over my time. So the past couple of days I've been playing catch up and watching all the VODs from this past gone weekend, which of course, for those of you who might not be aware, was the final week of the RLCS and RLRS. We'll be covering all those results and breaking down who's made it to LAN, who's not made it to LAN, who's in the promotion playoffs, and who is, just generally sitting in fucking limbo. Also that plus the big news of the week, because I love posting episodes immediately before something goes live, and it's massive for the Rocket League esports scene. Someone suggested we should do an aftershock extra or something like that every time we post a podcast, and then something massive comes out and immediately just cover that ASAP. And I'm like, nah, fuck that, I ain't got time.
Well, no, the thing there is me and Jay are actually thinking about changing the date, because we want to go live once again. We don't like doing these podcasts, but we want to get episodes out, and we don't have a choice otherwise. So we're there going, well, they seem to, Sonics don't like us anymore with their Tuesday, the Monday used to be the news post, and that then moved to Tuesdays, which we were okay.
Yeah, as we moved to Tuesday.
Yeah, now it's moved to to Wednesdays, and we're like, okay, let's move to Thursday, which I think is the only logical day we can do, considering my race stuff sort of finishes up in, I want to say 2 weeks, or after that, end of June. That should be realistic for me, but that's for us to figure out anyway.
Well, we'll bring you all those updates in regards to the podcast later on down the line, but for now, let's just do the news. And we'll start with the big triggering thing, obviously, for those of you who missed it, but announced literally minutes after we posted episode 30. I mean, literally fucking minutes after we posted the fucking podcast. This shit hit their subreddit, Faceit, announcing their new Faceit platform integration with the inclusion of Rocket League. This is something I am extremely hyped for, Bacon. Extremely fucking hyped for. The blog post talks about the new partnership that they've got basically going right now, in that there is an in-game button that you can use to find Faceit matches, and they're running currently a two-week period to stress test the system. But when it's complete and when it's ready and when it's in open public, we'll be able to use Faceit to queue for pugs and run tournaments essentially. But still, the close beta is still going on for about a week as of when this podcast should go out essentially. But essentially, what the bottom line is that this is fucking massive for Rocket League, and I'm actually really excited to see Faceit finally enter the frame, finally do some more good work. They're a really good company, and do you know what? We needed a system like Faceit for a very long time, in my opinion.
And it fucking works, which is one thing which we don't get to say a lot with Rocket League, is it now? Coming straight into it, it's only tournaments at the moment, which is fair enough, and the tournament system, I'm hoping, is not going to run the same way as they're going to do pugs, of course, because they've got that rudimental leveling system on Faceit, don't they? Whether you've got your level between 1 and 10. 10 is you're a hardcore player, and then 1's you don't play much, and that's how they weirdly stack everything up to then do their little leveling in tournaments. And so it's a little broken with skill levels at the moment, but it's all about stress testing the actual service, and for me it's all been running super smooth, so I'm quite excited because this actually looks like a good thing. The tournament system, since it got released in Rocket League, was a little bit broken every single time you used it. I can remember with Rewind, we tried to do our community nights, and we were like, oh, we'll just run it on the in-game tournament, super easy for everyone to sign up, and then when only two teams could actually get through to the finals without problems, it was a little bit no, this ain't going to work. It's too much effort to use Smash. Faceit is the answer, and I mean, we've had a sit down and talk with the guys at Faceit about getting tournament orgs onto their system, how we can use it, and run down that, and it looks very good. I'm excited for it.
And the cool thing about it as well is the fact that Faceit, they have like a system that really encourages community tournaments. Like, the one thing that we've wanted to see the most is support for the bubble scene. But the problem is that you can't support the bubble scene without putting a bit of money behind it. With Faceit, you don't actually need to do that, because for those who might not be aware, Faceit actually runs off a reward point system. And if you take part in tournaments, you can be awarded up to like 10,000 Faceit points. I know, because back in the day, we used to run community tournaments with UKCSGO.com, and literally like, every week we just give away 10,000 Faceit point prize pool, and people would turn up for that, because like the shit you can renew on the Faceit platform is fucking absurd. Let me go ahead and like bring up the system real quick. I didn't actually do my my pre-up thing, so I'm gonna have a look. See,
I'm actually looking at them right now and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah, see, because I didn't come to this episode prepared, Bacon, as usual. So I couldn't figure out what were I couldn't bring this up earlier. But the bottom line is that like you can renew for computer parts. You can go and get a fucking car if you want to. That's not the biggest prize pool. You can renew somebody said like 2.5 million Faceit points.
I think someone has actually renewed that. There's only ever been one person, but he did actually get a fucking car from it, which is it's like a Fiat or something like that. Like it's a legit Fiat fucking car. Yeah. A Fiat 500, a black Fiat 500 with like a yellow Faceit logo, and you can get stuff like in-game items, that are like worth value, especially if you're a CS:GO fan. Which
that's
is
like a massive thing.
Yeah, we got it in CS already, and I definitely expect that to be coming to Rocket League, where you can purchase skins. Like I'm saying skins, but your decal, whatever, from redeeming these points, because that's just the natural ecosystem of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is a big thing, I think, for Faceit. Honestly, I think this probably could be the biggest, one of the biggest changes coming through for Rocket League coming forward. Because while I do appreciate what Sixmans was able to do for the scene and giving us like an outside pugging service for the pros and the guys that are competing at a different level, I do think the Faceit is a little bit more inclusive, and B, also more rewarding, because again, those Faceit points in particular, they are going to be fucking massive. They are going to be insane, right?
They're incentive.
Yeah, they're incentive, right? They're incentive. And again, it's this thing about the community organizations. The guys like Rewind and Rival, who have been struggling to put together monthly tournaments and have been struggling to do this independently without I've been struggling to do this stuff independently without it's sinking a shit ton of money into it. Now they don't have to sink any money into it. Now they can just go straight in, just be like, right, let's organize a 16 team monthly right here, right now. We'll throw 50,000 Faceit points at the thing. You got to get partnered with Faceit and everything, but Faceit have been very, very responded to the lower level community organizations. Again, UKCSGO.com. Have you ever heard of UKCSGO.com? Chances are that most of the people listening to this podcast fucking haven't. And we were able to get 10,000 points a week from Faceit for the sake of our community tournament. You can bet your bottom dollar that if we can get like some of the mid-tier to top-tier level of Rocket League players involved in these tournaments, like for Rival and Rewind and whoever the hell, then seriously, this would kick shit up in Rocket League by quite the amount.
Yeah, this just basically like. Real talk right now, known from the whole Rewind perspective, doing weeklies was a killer. It's just a money sink. Whereas now you can start to put out those weeklies and not actually have to put any money down. You can still put those monthlies on, do the contracted, almost like you're a production company. If a sponsor comes in and wants to, let's just say Intel comes in, wants to put on a Rocket League event, we're the sort of guys they want to come to, and near enough put us behind their name. And now just having Faceit there to keep us working, keep us relevant, it's good. It is really good for the ecosystem.
Well, I don't want to ask Bacon, what have your experiences been with Faceit so far? I mean, specifically, number one, have you actually got a code to play in the beta yet? If not, I've
got two. You've got two?
Oh, really? You've got two accounts? Yeah. Fair
and
fucking
then that
play.
means I've got,
that's brilliant,
10
actually.
invite codes.
I was going to ask you what your impressions were based on the outside perspective, whether or not you've got yourself a code or not. But now that you actually do have a code, I do want to ask, what's your experience on Faceit actually been like thus far?
Fucking easy. Because I knew it, because the only time I've ever used Faceit before was for PUBG. Just doing because they did 2s, 3s, and 4s on their sort of it was the same sort of thing, just random pugging tournaments, and It was always horrible because you would get put up against, because that's what like the new Cloud9 guys and all of that use. They don't use the in-game stuff, so instantly got wrecked in there. Like thinking, playing ranked, oh, you're pretty good. Go up against the actual pros, and no, you're trash. And coming to Rocket League, the only problem is that it is tournaments, like I said, so you're at a whole wide skill range. I've been playing up against people that were plats, and easily wrecking them. And then suddenly I'm coming up against proper grand champs and like bubble scene players, and you just get absolutely smashed. So that's my only problem at the moment. But where it's the beta, that's expected. It's not anything at all. The system itself works absolutely fine. Don't get me wrong, Faceit is a little bit janky. I would definitely recommend getting the download client, like not the download client, downloading the client, which is a little bit easier to navigate because I really don't like the website. But otherwise, everything's there. I don't know how much of like the client and that they'll use when they move over, because they're including the in-game stuff, because that's not been released yet, and that'll be the real interesting thing. Where Sonics has got its own sort of system, where it's not reliant upon Steam, that they should be able to link it up through an API, which would be quite cool.
Well, they've already linked it up with the API. There's a fucking button in the game that allows you to find Faceit matches. Like, the bottom line is that this is going to be massive for Faceit. That's not out yet.
That's just coming. That's what will come out. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though, right? When it does come out, it's going to be a big thing. And it's the same thing with pugs, right? With the pugging service, it's not out yet, but when it comes out, it will be a big thing, because it will kill six-mans, but it's an appropriate above, like upgrade to the six-man system, I think, for the Faceit side. So, bottom line is that I
think the pugging system is going to be the big announcement at LAN, because from how this is looking, like I said, it's near enough working right now. It's just stress test and all of that sort of jazz. Give it another month, and I'll be ready. I think they'll be ready for release, so I wouldn't be surprised if we know there's going to be a big few announcements coming from LAN. This could be one of them.
Could well be, but either way, I can only see this as a positive thing. It's not like Epic Games where you can take some things away from it that may or may not be a bit troublesome. That this is huge and is big for the scene, and I'm excited to see how it plays out for everybody else. Right, let's move on to our second piece of news. A little bit RLCS related, not quite 100% RLCS related, but I did want to talk about the season MVP award, because there was only really two front runners for the EU scene that could be the season MVP, and that was Scrub Killer and Alpha. And for me, I think Alpha certainly deserved this MVP award. Obviously, he's the victor. Scrub Killer came a close second, but Alpha, I think, has just been... I think the best way to describe him for all our North American audience, guys, is basically the Justin of Europe right now. Like, he's playing out of his fucking mind at the moment. He's insane.
Yeah, for a lot of people that didn't know him, because, not many people, like, I'm not going to say not many people watch RLRS, but you get a lot of people that it's RLCS or nothing. Why would you watch the second division? Why not just watch the biggest division? I'm only a fan of Dignitas, thus I'm only going to watch Dignitas's games. Of
course, if you are one of those people, then you're going to be really fucking disappointed this season. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, but no, that's what I'm saying. It's that sort of mindset. And Alpha coming in like that Justin role last season, just a new kid on the block. We knew he was going to be nuts. We were actually more worried that one of the bigger teams were going to poach him from the Savage side, now Barca, weren't we? Because he is, I don't want to say by far the best player, because they have upped their game this season. Blue and Diva have worked on their defense, and that is why this is a dominating powerhouse. And I think this is one of the, Vitality and Barca, I've already said, is my prediction for the finals, because the NA scene, I reckon, will struggle against this new meta that these two teams are bringing forward. Barca, of course, still struggling against Vitality, but we'll get onto that later. But the whole sort of center point, the cornerstone of what makes Barca so good is Alpha.
Yeah, like he is the fucking rock of this side, and I don't want to go too much into it, because obviously we're going to talk about FC Barcelona in the playoffs in a little bit of time. But again, like, I can't overstate how fucking amazing it is to see him get his fair dues, because like he is amazing. He is a really good player. Honestly, I think he is the next big fucking thing. He is the next Turbo. He is the next fucking, he is the next best player in the world right now. I can see it happening. I can see him being on a team that will be world beaters, that will be part of, like an era, essentially, or like a dynasty of some sort. Like, if Alpha's going to be that guy. So, mark my fucking words, it's going to happen, right? Small little shout outs to him, obviously. We're going to talk more about the FC Barcelona side in the RLCS regional playoffs in a moment's time. For now, now, though, we're going to jump into our tournament roundup. I just realised as well, we're only 15 minutes into the podcast, Bacon. This might actually be a bit of a short show. And I also realised I forgot to take the fucking timestamps this time now that I've taken a look. So once again, Trox is going to be really pissed off at me, but I'll start from here and I will go back over those last 15 minutes and I will start taking timestamps now. So 15:05 is where we begin the tournament roundup. Let's do this. So RLRS results. Final week of league play for the RLRS. 4 matches to cover here with mostly sweeps coming through. I mean, for 2 of the results out of the 4. Complexity sweeping Xenomoon in the first matchup. Method sweeping Right Overs in the second. Xenomoon trying to reverse sweep against Baguette Squad, but ultimately failed. And Complexity beating out Vikings on a 3-1 basis in the final match to leave your final standings of the RLRS. Veloce and Complexity up at the top 2 at 7-0 and 4-3 respectively. ARG and Method will be your 3rd and 4th place team staying into the next season, and the bottom 4 dropping out of the RLRS is Baguette Squad, Vikings, the Right Overs, and Xenomoon in that order. So let's start with the Xenomoon here. I think that's where I want to begin. Because the thing about Xenomoon is that they are great, they are fantastic, and I think that they had a Cinderella chance at this one. But in the end, they faced against Complexity, and Complexity turned it on this week, did not fucking take any prisoners, and Xenomoon just got destroyed by that. They didn't really. I don't think they brought the same sort of level of effort against the Baguette Squad in their series after they knew that they weren't going to make it to top 2. So that just led them to be down and out and just not. I don't feel like they were trying in that second series.
No, I'm on the complete another thing where Baguette Squad are actually playing really, really good on Friday, and thus they were just cutting out what Xenomoon were trying to do. Again, Xenomoon dropping the Complexity was a massive hit because that was a super close series. It's just Complexity, when you've got Magnus, Greasy, still got problems with, of course, and I could see him getting changed out future down the line, but I don't know. Players always like him. It's just from that spectator standing, you don't know, but there's also team chemistry and all of that sort of jazz. And Flakes is absolutely popping off, but Complexity were always, beforehand, one of the secure top 2. Even most people will put them ahead of Veloce. Veloce has just been absolutely outstanding. This is the new team to come through and could cause some damage. But other than that, it just felt a really odd season of just how close RLRS level is. And we know a lot of the bubble scene players could have been in contention there. So it is just that the level of RLRS at the moment is just so darn good. It's not up to arguably top RLCS level yet, but they can throw in good performances, which we've seen from DreamHack and such. And Xenomoon, it was just a season of very much not getting the expected wins, and it was just very weird because this was a team that I was sure coming into it would make top 4, and they've come out 8th, even though that 8th is just one game from being 7th and one win from being 6th. It was super close. I say one win from being 6th, one win, and I think a differential of 5 from actually making it through, and that is nothing in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I mean, Xenomoon really drew the short straw in this one, and it sucks big time because in week 4, especially on that second stream, they showed so much promise, They showed so much great counterplay against ARG and the Vikings. It was like, okay, this could actually legitimately be a side to be reckoned with, This could be a squad that could do some damage. It'll be a very slim margin, but in the end, when they got themselves together, they had to face Complexity in the next round of things. It felt like it was just a stumbling sort of season for them, especially when the fact that they'd had a 2-week break essentially in week 2 and week 3, they were completely out of the game coming into week 4. They felt refreshed, but week 5 was just not their week, and it does kind of suck, It really does suck, I think, for the Xenomoon side, because these are good players, These guys are really, really good, and while they didn't really show what we saw from them in the DreamHack qualifiers, I do think there's a bit of potential for this team to go further and try and work on things. Whether they actually do that, I don't really know. To be honest, I don't think that they will stick together after this season because, even though the difference in terms of the numbers is deceivingly large, or deceivingly small, I should say, they're still going to look at that and say, right, we finished 8th, we finished bottom of the table, which honestly, I don't think it really was really was a bottom of the table affair for them at all. You know, for the majority of the season, it felt like it was, but you know, the statistics, the facts, they line up a little bit more differently.
Yeah, and just I've been looking because, of course, they've still been playing amongst all the other things like the Faceit esports series and all of that, which I think the finals are coming up super soon. We've got the 4 qualified teams. We forgot to add that into our little plan, so we might do a little piece at the end.
We'll do a piece for the finals. We won't do anything for the qualifiers, I don't think.
All right. But yeah, looking at them now, like this is a team which has a lot of potential, but just from good old Rocket League mindset, this is one which I do expect to split, which I'm not happy about, but I can understand. I do think these are fantastic players. They probably just have not found their final teams yet, because there is a big consistency problem with them as a unit, and that could stem from there not being a core player as such, which we see from a lot of other teams.
Yeah, and I think it hurt them as a result. You know, again, it does suck for Xenomoon, but the Cinderella story is over. It's a bit of a shame. It's a bit of a rip. But yeah, they're out of this one. So along with the other 3 teams, obviously the right was Vikings and Baguette Squad. You know, it was very close, I think, you know, from those guys. But in the end, they also didn't really have a decent chance of their own right. A team that did, though, barely staying alive.
Saying
by
that,
the way.
Jay, I'm getting things in saying they have split up actually. Just as I'm looking, doing my research now. RIP.
That's a big rip. Oh well, Xenomoon, it's been fun. It's been very fun, but, you know, whatever. But yeah, a team that did make it through was Method by the skin of their fucking teeth. Like, holy shit, 2 games difference. 2 games difference, and they barely stay alive against the Baguette Squad, who drew them in the win-loss victories, 2 games behind them. Vikings, who drew them in the match difference, and 5 games behind them. Like, holy shit. Holy shit. This was such a close sort of like tiebreaker, essentially. And for Method, it kind of all came down to that last victory. If they hadn't had swept the right overs, then I think that maybe Baguette Squad would have overtaken them and stolen their position in next season for RLRS. So for Method, it really came down to the wire this season. You know, I think it caps off a very, very rocky season for them overall, because, you know, there were times where it didn't really feel that confident, where they were losing some matches against the likes of the Vikings, for example, where it was like, okay, that's probably not right. You know, maybe the ARG loss is one to be expected, and the complexity loss and the Velocity losses are obviously also to be expected when you consider the caliber of team that those guys are at. But, you know, Method, I felt like they weren't coming into this one on form. We've talked a little bit about how their duo between Rix and Burrito isn't quite working at the moment. They will have one final season to try and pursue the opportunities, but this is like the 3rd or 4th season they've stayed into the RLRS or so here.
Which, in a lot of sense, is quite commendable, I'm going to say, because they are always, and they're the sort of like solid ground for you to be able to judge a team against for the RLRS level. The problem was this season they did not look good, and I think we've got teams that are better below them. It's just Method have a bit more consistency, which is a whole different sort of level of skill to have, of course. We know that they're swapping out Ocelon. They've got Astral in for the coming weekend for the Valencia qualifiers, and then they've also got him for Dallas. They're actually Method of flying their team out to America to compete at Dallas, which is quite cool. For me, that shows Method have a lot of confidence in this team, and they're playing the long haul in them. And Astral's a good up-and-coming talent. I hope he's just the thing that can spark this team to be as good as they can be, because these are 3, including Astral, very good players. It's just things aren't clicking into place.
I have my reservations, I think, about this team. You know, I feel like that there's... I feel like there will be... I'm just not sure that it's going to be the right move, to be honest. I don't feel like it's going to work out as well as they would have hoped it to. I feel like the Astral move, while it is an upgrade above Ocelon, it's not the problem with this team. And we have seen situations in the past where they've fixed, where you know, they haven't fixed the problem on a squad, but they have managed to make it better. You know, for example, the likes of the French side, Renault Vitality, you know, like obviously we were saying Ferry Pick needs to go, Ferry Pick needs to go. He didn't go, and obviously now they're the best team in the world right now. But, you know, this is very clearly like a synergy thing between the duo of Rix and Burrito B, and that hurts the core of the team on a level I don't think we've seen before, to be honest. Like, it doesn't have... It doesn't have... I don't know, it doesn't have the same ring to it, I think, is what I'm trying to say with this method move. I don't really know.
I'm trying to think, because the only justification I sort of like have to go against that is that in Rocket League you get a lot of trust issues, and it could just be down to both Burrito B and Rix Ronde not trusting in Ocelon's level of play, which is absolutely ludicrous, because Ocelon's a good player. It just was not a good fit. We saw them play with Ocelon do quite well during the starting run of them, and then the problems emerged, and they just could not get in. Like, when you start losing trust in a teammate, everything flops there, to the point which, as we know, coming around to the last week, they had already signed up Valencia with Astral, and it just shows they knew probably from the very few first weeks of the RLRS run that this was not going to be a long-term thing.
Well, apparently it's not. RIP this current method squad. They do remain in the next season. Let's see how Astral will do over the course of the Valencia qualifiers, of course, coming up this weekend. We'll be able to cover that next week on RLAfterShock. But for now, still have a few more things to cover in regards to the RLRS. In particular, we're talking about the top two fights. Obviously, Veloce secured their 7-0 victory last week, so they were guaranteed to be first place because no other team could contend with that. But it was down to ARG and Complexity. And up until today, ARG were right up there. It came down to 2 games difference for the Complexity side. Obviously, they had two matches to this week where they faced up against Xenomoon and swept them out. Vikings could have had a chance to try and play spoiler because they were in 2 overtimes to beat Complexity. And if they had won either of those matches, I think that ARG would have just about, they would have beaten out Complexity based off the fact that it would have been tied for game difference, and then it would have gone to the head-to-head results, which ARG would have won. And therefore, for that reason, Complexity taking a couple of good games above the Vikings side, and Vikings not being able to show up. In that case, Complexity are in the top 2. ARG beaten out by only 2 game difference here, Bacon, which kind of sucks for ARG. You know, like, it does suck big time, I think, because obviously this was their rookie season. We have a lot of expectations for ARG. I still think that they have a couple of problems in terms of the offensive line. Like, it wasn't as strong as it was during the Renegade Cup, for example, but they are losing out to Complexity, and we did have them and Veloce picked as 2 of our 3 main picks to go forward in this next season. So, you know, I think it kind of lined up to be about the sort of right level, the right way of history, I think.
Well, ARG, you got to think, they lost to, their 3 losses, 2 of them. One was to Baguette Squad, the other was Xenomoon. Now, Xenomoon were good, like I said, they were of caliber to be up in that top 4. It was a game 5, and it's just ARG. You remember that one? They got game 1 and game 3. They sort of just blew it. It was a really close season, but it was just really awkward between those 2. And then against Baguette Squad in the first week, again, blew it there. They've got to figure out a lot of, I'd say, preparedness, because in week 3 they went up against Veloce and they looked really good, but weren't able to get a goal. Now, in all fairness, across 3 games,
it was 1-0s.
It was 1-0s. So that's a bit more, that's absolutely fine, but they just were not able to get anything going. They were able to hold off on the defense and really keep Veloce in check, but they could not get a goal of their own. And for ARG, I actually think this is probably going to be the best case scenario for them in the long term of this team, where now they're not being rewarded for not fixing their problems. They're going to have another chance. They've got next season to come back, but they do need to build up some adaptation this side, which isn't the worst thing, because we know a lot of the bubble scene, a lot of RLRS teams struggle with that still. But what I'm saying is that basically they're secure for next season. They've got an off season to go away and think about that and sort out that adaptation, because if they come back with it, they could make RLCS next season. Like, they'd be in that contention with it, because this is a team with a lot of potential.
Yeah, you take a look who's going to be in the promotion playoffs for Europe, and you take a look at that competition, and it's like, well, I mean, actually, in theory, yeah, they probably could well make a run next season. You know, like I think we'll talk about a preview show. We'll talk about that closer to the time when the playoffs happen, because we've still got a couple of weeks. Or actually, it will be next weekend. Scratch that. So we can talk about that.
Prediction, dude, right at the end.
No. Oh, no, I mean, no.
Right.
We'll save that for next week's show. We'll save that for next week's show, I think, because obviously we got the Valencia qualifiers this weekend, so we'll talk about that in a bit more detail, I think. For now, though, that's your RLRS. Complexity and Veloce making it through to promotions. They'll be facing off against the Bricks and the Mouse Sports side in the relegations in a couple weeks' time. Not this weekend, next weekend after that. We'll be covering it, of course, here on RLAfterShock. So make sure you follow the Twitter at RLAfterShock and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Right, let's move on to the RLCS. We talked about it a little bit with Alpha, and obviously for this week it was I can't fucking say shit this weekend, Bacon. Oh my god, I am terrible. This weekend was the regional playoffs. This was to decide the European champions and our 4 representatives to LAN. And holy shit, what a bracket we have. To start from the bottom straight to the top, we will go from losers round 1, where Dignitas beat out Solo Mid to eliminate them, then went on to face off against the loser of the PSG versus Triple Trouble series. Triple Trouble won that to move to the semi-finals. PSG then beat Dignitas 4-1 to go up against Renault Vitality, at which point Vitality and Barcelona beat Triple Trouble and PSG, and now move into the grand finals, where Renault Vitality beat FC Barcelona 4-2 to become your new European regional champions. So let's talk about the bottom 2 teams here, Dignitas and TSM. Obviously, the odds were stacked against them, both being from the farthest match from the back, essentially. You know, they had to go for a double elimination match. They had to go through each other and then some of the best teams in the world. Like, you know, you're looking at that vein of the bracket, and it's like, oh shit, what if Renault Vitality, you know, that's the Renault Vitality series right there. That would have been the big, you know, thing for Dig and Solo Mid. But in the end, neither team made it forward out of the lower bracket. Neither team made it into the LAN, and both are, I want to say, surprising sides. I mean, at the end of the day, like, I think that any sort of these results that went out, like, you know, any one of these teams that went out and didn't make it through, like, I think probably that would have been a bit of a surprise, because they're all so damn good. But for Dignitas
the
and
6
TSM,
teams in these playoffs are all in the top 10 best teams in the world. At the moment, I'd put it probably those, Barca, Renault, Vitality, Triple Trouble, PSG, Dig, TSM, then you've got Cloud9, NRG, and G2, and then I'd probably actually put Veloce at the moment as the 10th spot. They seem to me just a little bit stronger than Bricks, who are struggling with consistency, and NA is always, other than those top 3, always a little bit iffy. But yeah, this could have gone. We were looking at this beforehand, and we were going, well, you cannot count out Dignitas or TSM to make the run from the lower sort of round 1 all the way up into those qualifying spots, and either of those could do it. But today, it was just it was horrid for those 2 teams, weren't it?
Yeah, like, you know, it felt like a scrappy match in that lower round matchup, honestly. And obviously, Dignitas got destroyed by PSG. I mean, I remember at the time we were just coming off of the TCS broadcast and we were watching that match live, and I was like, I'm really fucking happy for them. But Dignitas, you know, you take a look at what Dignitas and TSM accomplished at the end of last year and during the middle of last year as well, and it's like, how far can you have fallen from grace? You know, they're not like, you know, again, they're still a really good couple of teams, but, you know, they were LAN champions, and since their last LAN victories, they haven't been able to capture the magic in the same sort of way that we expected out of these 2 teams. Like, we came in, we saw TSM dominate in the early season, we saw Dignitas obviously coming off the back of their victory at DreamHack, and we had high hopes for both teams. You know, we thought to ourselves, you know what, it's going to be a really competitive season. We're going to see these 2 at the top end of the whole thing. We're going to be seeing them battle out for those LAN spaces, and in the end, when it came down to the regional playoffs, neither side were able to show that prowess.
No, and I'm going to say this is probably a best case scenario for these 2 teams, because TSM are, I would argue, probably the 4th best team at the moment in EU. Dignitas have dropped off a little bit, but TSM and Dignitas are both struggling from consistency issues, and it's a lot of consistency issues down to frustration. They know they're better, and they think they're better, but that does not win you a game. It seems like a lot of ego problems, if you know what I mean. So when they go down, they're not adapting right, and they just get frustrated. We're definitely seeing that with Dignitas quite a lot. So I reckon the sort of not making it through to LAN when you've sort of not been playing your best is actually the best result for them, because we've seen in past seasons where these teams could just completely flop it and they still make it through because they're just that good. You know, you can't redeem yourself all the time, and these teams are learning that. So going away this off season is going to be massively important to them. Like I've already said before, that Dignitas aren't attending Dallas. You know, they're not flying their team out to there. I just want them, again, for TSM and Dignitas, to just put these lads in a gaming house and just sort of get them a month of team building and sort of just hash this problem out, because we've seen Dignitas get results. They got Leipzig, you know, straight off the bat essentially, and then they just became poop. So what happens in that time? What is it? It's team breakdown essentially, and TSM, they are just too damn inconsistent for their own good. So there's got to be something put in place for them to fix that. You know, we see it happen all the time in, say, CS, where a lot of the time it is just team building exercises, which seem really weird, but it's what happens. Get them all into a house, get them all down to Butlins or something like that, and who knows, could fix the shit that they're in.
Get them to Butlins.
That's it.
That is like
Centre Parks as well. We're not sponsored.
Of course, we would absolutely love to be, boys. I mean, fuck, if you want to make an Aftershock themed roller coaster ride, that would go fucking down well
you
with
know
me.
what
I'll
would
tell
be
you
fucking
that.
ace, actually? A tournament out of Centre Parks. Get like one of those big like cabins
Fuck
or something
it.
like
No,
that.
the other day,
like
No, man, the other day I was hardcore procrastinating to the point where I was making up a plan for a LAN event that never is going to happen. Fuck it. Let's pitch it to fucking Butlins. Let's make it happen. Let's make RLAfterShock LAN happen. We'll get all the fucking best teams out there. We'll form a fucking partnership ride. Boys from, is it the Merlin group that own Butlins? Or whatever it is. Yeah, the Merlin group. Hit me up at RLAfterShock on Twitter, right? And we'll get this shit sorted. No, they're listening. I fucking guarantee they're listening.
Well, no, you just sell the whole Beyond the Summit sort of deal where you put loads of teams in just one house and it's a really chilled experience. That would work so well. And then you just have like, you know, you get promotional videos and that just going on. Just everyone's gone to the pool or the beach of the day. Be fucking ace.
Nice. Right, well, obviously, in back to serious land, Dignitas and TSM.
I don't like this land.
No one does, Bacon, but we have to do it. Right. Dignitas TSM obviously failing to make it forward, but teams that certainly have made a lot of history is SCB and Triple Trouble, because not only is this the first season where one team from the RLRS promotions has made it into the LAN event, it's actually the first season in history where two of them have done it. Obviously, FCB did it in the regular season where they took the top 2 spot and moved into the semi-finals by default, but Triple Trouble, a 4-1 victory above PSG in the upper quarterfinals, and that left them in against FCB in the semi-finals, in the regionals, and obviously a spot at LAN, which is fucking massive. I have to say, Bacon, I am very, very impressed with this side. You know, a lot of doubts coming into this season. A lot of people, myself included, were criticizing it like, yeah, Speed's gone now. What can they realistically do, you know, without their big star player who's just gone over to the Bricks, and the Bricks have been, you know, obviously winning WSOE at the time when they were on the flip side, and we were like, shit, you know, they've lost a major key player in their line. Apparently it doesn't faze them. Apparently Speed was the problem, because obviously he's up for relegation this season. But Triple Trouble, meanwhile, smashing it out of the park, beating PSG in relatively confident fashion, and they're going to LAN. You know, it really is a Cinderella story for these guys, because the amount of hell this roster has been through over the course of their entire existence, let alone this fucking season, it is such a feels-good man moment for Ronicky and Tadpole. Ronicky especially, because he's the centerpiece of this whole thing, but Tadpole, I don't know if you went on Twitter and saw it, but his sister posted a fantastic video.
That was such a good heartwarming video.
Yeah, no, it was such a good video. Like, you know what, it made me proud to be a Rocket League fan, seeing that shit go down, you know, and seeing his family being supportive of him. Like, you know, like, my heart goes out to Tadpole, my heart goes out to Triple Trouble, because, like, fuck me, this is incredible for them. But all eyes are on them now, Bacon. All eyes are on them to show up at the LAN event. Whether they can do it or not is a question we'll have to come to when we see the final lineups of the LAN event itself. But for Triple Trouble for now, though, like they must be feeding on Cloud9.
I mean, quickly having a look, their group at the moment consists of NRG, and they'll also have the second seed from Oceania. So we know that already because they've already been putting it out there, Jay. NRG is not going to be an easy opponent for them, but they should hopefully have the upper hand on the Oceania teams. You know, it's just naturally how it is. So hopefully we should be seeing NRG make it through those group stages, get through to the finals, of course. I'm trying to think of like anything else I can really put that's not a downer to his side, but they started off RLCS pretty shit, arguably. Their first week, they had 2 matches, 3-2, just scrimping it, like scraping past the bricks, which of course was a good mental boost to them because naturally, yeah, you lost speed. And it was like, not a grudge match because they're still friends, of course, but it was still a bit like, hey, we're better than that. And that's got to be a good morale boost. But then they lost to Mouse. The only game Mouse was able to win was against Triple Trouble back in that week 1. And then it just got a little bit better over time. Of course, second week they did drop to TSM, but it's TSM. But then after that, they got things rolling in their favor. And this is a team that are only getting better, which is great to see. They've got a month now to prepare for RLCS LAN. They know who they're going up against. I doubt they're probably going to be focusing on the Oceania teams because that is like the one you can. I don't want to be rude to the Oceania region, but they're looking a little bit hurt this season around. But they're definitely going to be focusing on how to beat out the NA teams and the NA play style, you know?
Yeah, you know, that's going to be the main focus because let's think about who their big opponent is. It's going to be NRG. Like, you know, there's no way around that. Like, come on. These guys were the best in North America for this season. Like, they were obviously, you know, former finalists in their own right. You know, Justin with the insane This Is Rocket League shot. They went 7-0. You know, they pulled the Veloce over in North America. You know, things are a bit closer here in Europe, but still, that's a dominating team. A very dominating team to have to deal with over in your group stage, let alone the playoffs themselves. So I'm going to be excited to see how NRG will weigh up against that. I'll be curious to see how well it will go for them. But for Triple Trouble for now, though, they can celebrate. They can celebrate knowing that they did really fucking well this season, and obviously making it to the LAN, being one of the first 2 teams in history to make it in from the RLRS, and in the same season as they promoted, go to the LAN event. I'm going to be excited to see them. It's a shame it's not in London because holy shit, the roof will pop off for Tadpole. Fuck me. Anyway, let's move on to PSG, another team which will have a lot of eyes on them, because I just want to say, just for the record, right, this is the best PSG side we have ever seen. Like, these guys are looking solid. They are looking incredible. And obviously making it to the LAN event is proof of their incredibleness, you know. They had a bit of a rocky start in the playoffs against Triple Trouble, but then they beat Dignitas relatively easily. And then they came extremely close to Renault Vitality. 4-3, it came down to a Game 7, and Renault Vitality damn near lost control of the series at several points throughout the course of the series. I was watching it. It was a really, really good class of showing here from the PSG side. Like, you can't deny how good their defensive was and how good their rotations, I think, were from the PSG squad. My thing, however, is that now we're moving into the LAN environment, and we know what the stigma, not the stigma, but sort of the attitude around PSG is. You know, they're an online set of stars, but at LAN they lose their identity. And once again, it comes back to the same question we've been asking for months, Bacon. What have they done in order to try and counteract that?
You're forgetting there's Dallas coming up in a few weeks' time before RLCS. I reckon it's perfectly poised for them. They got through to Dallas, not from those open qualifiers, because that was done by TSM and Barca, but actually from coming second in league play. That's how PSG got their free ticket to Dallas, because we don't know if their org, like the actual PSG org, would have flown them out beforehand. But for me, this is actually a good, like, final ditch attempt to get them over to America, get them ready, LAN ready, because again, it's a big difference in mindset, and we know PSG have struggled. But we've got to remember as well, with PSG, every single time they're getting ever so slightly closer, I wouldn't be so surprised. Like PSG are in my top 4 teams to win LAN, like to win Season 7. And yeah, I would not be surprised if we could see a good performance in Dallas and then an even better one at LAN, where they're going to get some vital experience, especially against the American teams here from Dallas, where the EU side's probably not all the orgs are going to be making the trek across, but the American ones definitely will.
Yeah, I mean, I am curious. I am excited to see how well they'll be able to do from the from that PSG camp, obviously with their control out. Yeah, no, I feel like it'll be a fun time for PSG to be able to do well at the Dallas LAN and see how well they can contend themselves. So we will have a measuring stick going into the World Championships. I think is the key thing right there. But again, even around the Dallas LAN, the questions still surround PSG. It's like, what have they done in the interim? What have they been able to do to try and improve that situation? Because again, we have not seen PSG at LAN since. Was it WSOE or was it Leipzig? It was Leipzig. It was Leipzig as well. And back then, obviously, PSG were able to go relatively well in and deep against it. Obviously, I think they went out in the group stage, if I recall correctly. But it was like the second day group stage where they lost to the Dignitas side, who ended up winning the whole thing overall, and obviously against Flipside, who were on a tear of their own right in that group. So again, it was a decent run, but it wasn't the run. It wasn't like PSG made it through all the way. It wasn't like they managed to just smash everybody out of the water. They lost to Bread in the first day of the group stage. Like they lost out to, they ended up losing to some of the North American sides. They had a bit of trouble over the course of that LAN against Echo Zulu, for example. Mm-hmm. There's still some questions about PSG and what they can do at LAN. And again, I have no measuring stick. I have no idea really where they stand at the moment.
Yeah, and that's why, why Dallas is going to be so important, essentially, because it will give us that. Because they're a surprisingly consistent team, PSG. Because, like we said, who did they lose out to at Leipzig, which, again, was a few months back now. It was Dignitas and Flipside that knocked them out in day 2. And then day 1, if I'm just bringing this up now, just to make sure I don't get any of this all, wrong in that. Yeah, they lost out to Bread, and were able to beat out Mouse Sports. Now, Bread are actually quite good. Now, Space Station Gaming over in America, we are hoping for them to actually make it through on the NA side. So we had 3 newly promoted teams to really just bolster that whole story there. But unfortunately, they couldn't do it. It was Rogue in the end. And here, I'm looking at it in PSG, yeah, they still have that problem with LAN, but we're marking it against them from a few months back. Who knows what they've been doing in the interim,
Yeah, I'm curious. I want to know. I'd love to have a chat with Fruity, to be honest. I mean, I've been wanting to get him on the show for a while now, and hopefully I will soon. Little teasers coming up right there. I think I've been teasing it for the longest fucking time. Everything is falling through.
This is no longer a tease. It's just a fuck off, Jay.
It's like when Valve teased fucking Half-Life 3. It's like it's not coming, but you still get a little bit led on for the factor.
Well, you talk about that in Left 4 Dead 3. That's why they made the fucking World War Z games, because they weren't doing that.
Exactly. Let's fucking make a fan-made Half-Life and not fucking hunt down the Freeman bullshit, whatever that fucking game was. Mm-hmm. Anyway, but enough about first-person shooters. We're still talking about Rocket League because we have one more topic to cover, and that is, of course, your regional champions, Renault Vitality, whom obviously in this season were looking almost immortal. I say almost because that one victory, that one loss that they lost to Triple Trouble with, obviously made them look very immortal indeed. But over the course of the season, that was the only team they lost to. They went into this playoff. They had a struggle against PSG. We talked about that already. But in the end, when it came up to FCB and how they've contended against them, they did well. They did fine. They did absolutely great. 4-2 on the board, and obviously they are your champions. So I think that they look like the new Dignitas, essentially. Like we talked about, we talked about the Dynasty last year, and we were talking about how Dignitas were unquestionably the best team in the world. And I'd say that this team are now unquestionably the best team in the world right now here, Bacon. Like they are looking insane. They are looking like Dignitas did back at their peak right now.
And I think I said this, like a good 2 months ago, Jay?
Yeah, no, I put it out on Twitter. I was like, yeah, that's a bit
Yeah.
of a bold statement from Digital Bacon to say Renault Vitality will be the best team in the world. And lo and behold, here we stand, fucking untouchable virtually throughout the entire season, and untouchable by FCB for the most part over the course of their grand final performance. It was still 2 games taken away by FCB. Bit of an improvement from their earlier performance in the season, however. We can talk about that a little bit later. But, you know, for Renault Vitality, again, they are just looking fucking great. And yeah, you called it. You know, you said 2 months ago, you think that they're going to be the best team in the world. And here we are. Honestly, I do think that these guys are going to be the world champions by the end of New Jersey.
And it all comes down to the new form of defense. Let's take it against Barca, who are arguably becoming the second best team in Europe at the moment. Like, I would have probably before, like, this season started, given that to TSM as it is progressing through, probably to PSG. But I reckon it is now Barca with just how they're demolishing the rest of the EU scene. I don't know how they're going to stack up against the American side so much, but I reckon it's going to be fantastic because the Americans just hammer on EU recently purely because of their aggressiveness can really just throw, and their speed can really throw off a lot of the EU sides. But that's not Barca or Vitality, is it? They both play really, really fast. And when we look at Vitality, it's that defense where they essentially pass their way out of defense with so much precision and then get the ball downfield. It's nuts. All 3 players have near enough the same play style these days, which sounds really odd in a sort of Rocket League standing point. But it all comes down to them knowing where they would want to be, and so they're going to put the ball there, knowing that a teammate's going to be there. It is a absolutely ludicrous play style, and it is just so seamless. It flows so well. They at the start, you know, when they were losing matches, you know, back during Leipzig and all such, it didn't look immaculate purely because they were tripping over each other. You saw a couple of bumps in that. That's starting to go now. Yes, there's still 1 or 2 bumps in a series, but not game-wise, they are pretty much looking flawless. The only problem they had was against Triple Trouble, who were able to break down. They knew that they had to intercept in that defense. After that, Vitality's got stronger knowing how to mix up because they were starting to get a little bit predictable, and they're changing up their defensive style. And this is the biggest problem that Barca have against Vitality, is that they don't know how to quickly dart in and beat that defense, which Barca's all about the attack still. They've got better in defense, but their biggest sort of like power to them is their grade S attack, which Vitality don't have a problem with.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, Vitality, you know, they are, you know, they don't have many problems at all in their entire line. Like they aren't immortal though. I think is the key thing to remember about Vitality. They can be beaten. You know, Triple Trouble have already proven it. PSG came this close to proving it a little bit earlier on. Not only during the season but also, of course, here in the playoffs where they had a very very close best of 7 against Renault Vitality. You know, they took them to the distance, you know, I feel like there is a way to outbeat Renault Vitality. I still think that they're probably the favourites to win the LAN. They're still my bets on where they're going to win the LAN. But I think the final test for a similar sort of situation to where PSG's final test is going to be LAN itself. Renault Vitality's final test will be on LAN against the North American squads, because we've seen many a time how a big European team have looked so good against Europe. You know, case in point, Dignitas, but then they've shut up to LAN event, and then the North American sides have taken them to the limit, and not only done that, they've also managed to beat them in certain cases. So let's talk about that for a second before we end off the show. Like, do we think that Renault Vitality can contend against the NRGs and the Cloud9s, and who else is going to be at LAN? The G2s essentially of the world.
So Renault Vitality are actually in a little bit of a tricky position. This is the only thing I've got against Renault Vitality being able to make it through and win everything, is their group. And again, this is more a problem with how the bracket is done for RLCS this season. If you look, the top half of the very final, the top 8 part of RLCS is A versus C. First seed A goes up against second seed of C, and then just below that, first seed of C goes up against second seed of A. Below that, first seed of B. So basically, Group groups A and C won't meet B or D until the final, which is broken. I don't know why they've gone with this, but hey-oh. That's for them to figure out, and I'm sure that's going to get changed next season because people are arguing about it. But essentially, Vitality have PSG, which is the only team I can see beating them out in Group D. And I expect PSG to get beaten by Cloud9. So I could see, and they've got to do it, the very first match of the playoffs, the very last day, I think that is, of RLCS, Vitality could get knocked out by PSG. If they can survive PSG there, they can run on right until the finals, where I do expect them to face off against Barcelona, because that is the only other team I can sort of see take down Vitality, because Barcelona's been getting better. Like, we cannot... Like, against Vitality, I'm saying, because you got to think, they had struggled, and then come off to that last match, they're able to pull off a mighty comeback, you know? Like, they got the overtime, they lost in the overtime in Game 2, came around to Game 4, they were able to take that 3-0, which was quite nice for them. 2-1, where Vitality was starting to adjust, and Vitality's adjustment was really good to come back into it and, you know, win it out in the end 4-2. But Barca do now have the ability to take down Vitality. It's not secure yet, but give it a month. You know, both teams are going to Dallas, and then we could see something magical happen. I wouldn't like, these are my two sort of sure teams to make it on through, and they're only going to meet each other if they make it through to finals.
Yeah, and again, it sort of like goes back to the idea of the Dallas LAN being the measuring stick, essentially, of the RLCS LAN finals. So we'll be looking forward to that when it comes about May 31st to June the 2nd. It'll be a very fun time, certainly for everybody involved, and we'll be looking forward to covering that when the time rolls around. But for now, we're going to end off the show. Next week, we do have the Valencia open and closed qualifiers to talk about. Plus, we're talking about the Spaghetti Esports Series finals and the LAN finals that will be taking place over in Paris. We've got some interesting names that will be turning up in that particular tournament, and anything else that might crop up in terms of the news. I don't think there's anything else going on other than that we know of here for the Rocket League scene, at least as far as my knowledge. Maybe I might be a complete fucking idiot, but the bottom line is still that the Rocket League stuff to come up this week is going to be very, very fun indeed, I think, Bacon.
Oh yeah, definitely. My only problem with this fucking coming week is that with the Valencia stuff, I'm having to do broadcast work for all of it. I can't commentate because we're lacking broadcasters in EU at the moment, so I'm just having to pick up that one.
Big rip. It's fine though, because I'll be casting it, right, Bacon?
yeah. You already know you put yourself down on the list for that, so. Yeah.
I put myself down for both EU and North America, so I'm going to be covering both, Bacon.
That's it, actually. I put myself down to commentate on NA as well, so I'm hoping I get that, you know?
Well, we'll see how well it will go. Obviously, you can keep up with all that action via, I think it's Rewind and Rival this time that are doing the streams for... I
mean, we should... The announcement should have gone out by now, so I don't mind leaking it, but it's definitely EU is looking to be... Rewind and Shogun doing them, with Rival arguably doing... They put themselves down. They've got the option to do the EU Open, but then it will just be Shogun and Rewind doing the closed on the second day. Because, of course, they've changed the format of doing it. Instead of across 2 weekends, it's now just across 1 weekend, and going all like balls to the wall, one after the other, because that's it with the NA stuff. We can't do the first shift of NA, can we? We have to wait until the second shift because there could be a little bit of an overlap.
Indeed. Well, regardless, we'll talk about that again in more detail when we come up to watch all the action coming through in the open and closed qualifiers this weekend for DreamHack Pro Circuit, and of course Spaghetti also. I almost said Spaghetti there. I mean, I'm going to have Spaghetti a little bit later on tonight, so I'll be fine anyway. Anyways, but for now though, we're going to end off today's show here for RLAfterShock. Thank you very much for joining us. I've been the Eternal J. This has been Digital Bacon. Any final words before we head off for another week of Rocket League?
Not really. I'm just really confused. So I've got a blister on my foot and it's now bleeding. No, I don't know why.
Oh, no one needed to know that shit, Bacon. Fucking hell. Right,
Well,
we're
it's
outta
like dried
here.
up, so I don't know when it bled. So that's
We're
it's
outta
like
here.
you know when
We're
you get
outta
a cut
here.
or something and you just have no idea. Like when the fuck did I cut myself? Or like you get a scrape or a graze, and it's
We're
one of those.
getting
That just
the fuck out of here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here next week for even more of the Aftershock.